What is up, everybody? Welcome to Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Network in conjunction with Tegna and 9 News. Very exciting day for the Locked On Network. Make sure to rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at Locked On Nuggets. Joining me post-game after another Nuggets win as they continue to roll on after a rocky start to the season is Adam Mares from DNVR. Adam, how are you tonight?
I'm good. I'm a little tired. You know, this road trip's been rough. It's been a rough road trip for all of us. But, I'm excited to talk about a win.
Remember traveling places? Like, that's the thing is, like, It's crazy that the players are like, oh, the travel. And we're like, I genuinely am like, I have not left my home except to go to the grocery store for so long. Easy win tonight. Just an easy breezy, got a little tense in the third quarter, but in general, the Heat had everybody out. A bunch of dudes were having to start and play minutes that were not ready for such things. The starters blistered them out of the gate and just kind of never looked back. Am I off on that description, you think?
No, I think that's right. I mean, I would say that we now know what the halftime lead needs to be for the third quarter not to get too uncomfortable. It's 25 points. If Nuggets can be up 25 at the half, the third quarter is not a nerve-wracking one.
I mean, look, I don't have a whole lot to like criticize or like really play up here. Like Jokic, 21 and 11. The assists were down because they continue to play him single coverage. The Nuggets shot 46% from the field, 33% from three. Took 43 threes, which I think is a good sign for them. Like they were absolutely bombing. They held the Heat to 29% shooting from three. They allowed a lot, but they were up.
Well, let me ask you this: Did they allow them to, or were they just off? I mean, this is one of the big questions. They started 0 of 13,
right? So I think they gave up a lot of threes. Is my meaning is that they gave up a lot of threes, but I will say, like when I went back and watched, like I went back and rewatched all of Duncan Robinson's, and they were all contested looks. Like Gary Harris was in his grill on every single look. And so if they're missing Goran Dragic and they're missing all these dudes, it gets to a point where it's like, you know, if you can get a hand up on Duncan Robinson, and like, look, Duncan Robinson can hit those shots. He's a great shooter, but they were willing to live with it. Jokic just kind of had his way with what he wanted. Didn't have to. I didn't think that he was necessarily. I thought he played really good defense tonight, actually, on Bam. I know they sent some help, but I thought that he played pretty well on Bam Adebayo tonight.
Well, Nuggets defense as a whole, I mean, obviously it was fantastic again against an extremely shorthanded Miami Heat team, but they hold him to 82 points, and they hold him below 20 points in 2 quarters and 21 points. It was really just the third quarter where they looked out of sorts, and I thought that had as much to do with their offense. You know, they allow 32 points. You look at that and say, okay, that's a bad defense. But a lot of that was just ugly possessions on offense. Bad. You have to score on defense the other direction. But first, second, fourth quarters, the defense was pretty dialed in. And I do think there's a lot of encouraging things. Another thing, though, Matt, to look at from this one, they continue to win in different ways. And Michael Porter continues to be one of the guys that contributes to that. Now, he wasn't fantastic tonight, but he was very good. And he was specifically good at the one moment where the game was sort of a little uncomfortable. When the game got down to a 9-point game from 25 to 9, and nobody seemed to be able to get a rhythm offensively, they had this option that was, hey, we don't need a play. We don't need to get a good look. We just have a guy that, you know, can make tough looks. And I thought him and JaMychal Green both did that in the third quarter and early fourth quarter. And that was just enough to like open those leads back up to 14-15 and put the game away.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a really good way to put it. Like, that's a great point because that is what happened, right? Is like they got close and then Porter hits a three and they kind of come back again and Porter hits another three and he just kept them at arm's length. And that's having that option, I think, is huge for when the offense isn't clicking. Right. Because that has been kind of a problem for Denver in the past is like, if things are working, then it's great. And if it's not working, things get tense and tight. And then it's like, what are we going to do? And you're just kind of hoping something works out. And sometimes Jokic hits a fadeaway. And now you have Porter that can kind of come in and make those kind of shots and kind of redirect it. Jamal, not a great game, I thought, from him. I didn't think that he played great tonight. 4 of 11, 14 points. 4 assists, which was good. I felt like he was in the role of the offense. He was a plus 30. Hard to complain about that. But I didn't feel like – I thought defensively he was good. But you're still kind of waiting for Jamal everyone's waiting for Bubble Jamal to come back, and it just may not be until the playoffs that happens.
The way I put it, because I thought he was fine tonight, other than that he seemed to me to pass up a lot of opportunities to be aggressive. And I think, and that's what jumps out to you. I mean, the 4 of 11 shooting obviously could be better, but to me, I just think it's very difficult for Jamal to balance being the scorer, which is where he's at his best. I mean, in the bubble, he was at his best because they needed 50 points from him, and he kept delivering that.
Right.
And with that, okay, now we've got Michael Porter, now we've got Jokic, now I got to get Gary Harris going, I got to get guys comfortable. And it's very, very difficult for a guy who is a better scorer than point guard. In my opinion, it's very difficult for them to strike that right balance. Like Chris Paul, he's a great point guard first and foremost. But when he needs to score, at least in his heyday, he was very good at like, hey, I can step into that role. I think it's harder going the other way. Jamal Murray's a great scorer. He's a good point guard. And I think it's hard for him to like strike the right balance when he's so keyed in, as it appeared to be tonight, on the distributor role.
It was good to get garbage time. That was good.
That was good.
I feel like that was a plus that they didn't have. Like I do think we've talked about this. Like it's good that they put away a team that this didn't wind up being the third quarter didn't turn into the fourth quarter being all back and forth and really stressful down the stretch, right?
Yes and no. The one thing I'll say is they did get outscored by 16 points in the third quarter, which is really bad. I mean, that's you get an F- for that quarter. It just so happened to be that they were up 25 and can afford it. But I wouldn't put it that they held tight or anything like that. I would put it that thank God they were up by any astronomical amount.
Yeah, and I guess it's just like this Heat team just didn't have enough to really threaten them. Really, so like part of me though is in the mindset of like, I'm fine with that. Like if they want to conserve their energy and if they can get out with the win, as long as you don't, because I do think that there were times last year they would have screwed around and made this into this would have been a 5-point game down the stretch. It would have been touch and go, and they were able to take care of business. Now, some of that again is just like the Heat were so undermanned. Like they just, and it's like they were undermanned. Bam didn't have a good night. Kendrick Nunn had a bad night. Duncan Robinson had a bad night. Like, I can't point to anybody for Miami who I can look at and go, they played really well. Like, there's just nobody that I can point to and say that. Was there anybody that you thought had a good game for Miami?
Not really. As you mentioned, everybody. Well, part of this was that first quarter, nobody could make a shot. I mean, 12 points in the first quarter was horrible. So you start right off the bat, and then, not really.
So they're rolling though now. Like they feel good about themselves. Like that's clear. Like they've got momentum. They feel like the post-game comments were very much in the vein of like they've righted the ship. They feel like they've righted things.
I definitely get the sense from watching their post-game interviews that they feel good about where they are. Definitely feel that.
Okay, well, let's take a break and let's ask about whether or not they're actually there.
Okay.
And then we'll pick that up after the break. Before then, let's talk about betonline.ag. Obviously, the big game in 2 weeks. Lots of props to be found on that. Lots of bets to be found on that. Lots of angles and storylines, and you can pick your side in the battle of the goats, the elder goat versus the baby goat, or as I say, the fake goat versus the real goat. You can do all that. You can get your bets in if you want extra on the game at betonline.ag. Sign up today for a free account at betonline.ag and use that promo code LOCKEDON for your 50% welcome bonus. College basketball is in full swing. That's always a good one. Drake with another amazing win tonight. You've got you can bet on the Jazz, which is a Nuggets fan. Must be lots of fun to bet on the Jazz, who just continue to roll through everybody without Donovan Mitchell tonight, beating the Mavericks and costing me quite a bit of money. But
are they better without Donovan Mitchell? We need to have that conversation. I mean, that's
are we ready to have that conversation? You can do all that at betonline.ag. Don't sit on the sidelines anymore. Get in on the action. And don't forget to use that promo code LOCKEDON to receive a 50% welcome bonus with your first deposit. BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts. We will be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for making this part of your day. Really appreciate it. Matt Moore, joined by Adam Mares. So, Adam, we talked about whether they're back after that last game versus the Mavericks. Yeah. And then they carry it over with this one. Do you think that they're bumps in the road? I'll ask this. Do you think that they're major bumps in the road? They'll have a stretch where they struggle, for sure. But do you think their major bumps in the road are kind of over?
No. Major bumps in the road, no, only because I feel like this season might go like tonight's game. And that I think that there'll be moments of where it's, oh, wow, this team looks incredible. And there'll be moments where it's like, okay, they still have things to figure out, because I think they have a lot of things to figure out. I don't think Michael Porter's coming off the bench for the rest of the season. They have established this rhythm while he's been coming off the bench. At some point, I think they'll make the change. I don't think that they'll make the change until they lose a game. So should they lose, whenever their next loss is, that might be the last game before a lineup or a rotation mix-up happens. But, there's going to be those growing pains. I do think that one thing that is going in their favor right now is that I think guys that needed to feel good about themselves are feeling good about themselves. Gary Harris, I thought, was great in this game. 7 assists. And it wasn't even great because of his shooting, which would have been its own thing. But he was great because it just felt like he was finding himself in spots in the offense where he was contributing. And then, of course, Michael Porter Jr. has found himself right now with how he's played over the last few days. And I just think those things were important. So they got some momentum, but there's going to be a halt to that momentum at some point. Hopefully 5, 6, 7, 8 games from now, they get a nice long streak going.
Top level defensive night from Gary Harris. Just top level. Like, he was fought through screens, contested shots, stuck in there to dig, was flying all over the court. Just this is a really great game to see from Gary Harris. I thought it was really good. Let's talk MPJ. Because every show must contain the conversation about
he's
MPJ.
So interesting.
So let's go through this a couple of different ways. Does he need to start right now?
No, he doesn't need to. I do feel like you're delaying the inevitable. But the Nuggets now have a nice rhythm going, and they just have a win streak going. And I really do. I saw George Karl put this out on Twitter today that sometimes when you have a win streak going, you just don't mess with it. Especially, and I think in part is, if you do mess with it and they lose, then it feels like that's why you lost. And then it creates that uncomfortableness. So I don't think that he needs to. He's playing a lot of minutes. And what I am more interested in at this moment than him starting or not is just how much our guy's starting to trust him. And I think Jamal Murray's been there for several games. I think Jamal Murray is playing like he knows he needs to kind of, when they share the court, that he needs to find him and this or that. But I thought tonight was the first night I felt like Jokic deliberately sort of looked for him at moments. And maybe that was because they knew the offense wasn't working in the half court in that third quarter. But I'm more interested in that than whether he starts the game on the bench or not.
Playing more minutes than Barton, finishing games. I think their best lineup is some version of Murray, Green, MPJ, and Jokic, and then fill in the two guard with either Gary or Monte.
Yeah. Or Barton. I still put him in there. And when PJ was back there, like those guys, I would be comfortable calling that fifth spot more often than not a who has it going one, with a default going towards Gary Harris.
Okay. I guess the question is it worth it to make the starting unit the best it can be if it comes at the cost of the bench can possibly, not for sure, but the possibly getting worse? Because like one thing we haven't seen a lot of is Millsap with the bench units.
Well, right. That's true.
And so like, that's one of the questions here is if we look at Millsap and we go, okay, he's not the same player that he used to be, and it's getting rough. He's got to play because you just do not have enough minutes to not play him, I don't think. And so, is it better? I don't think it's a good idea to take somebody and be like, we have to cover him with the starting unit. I don't like that approach.
Right.
But I also, and like maybe he'd be great with the bench. Like I think there's scenarios where he'd play really well with the bench.
Well, here's something to think about, Matt. Both last game and this game, the starting unit has looked incredible in the first quarter and horrible in the third quarter. And I think if you're a coach, it's hard to read. Like we know the aggregate of that lineup has been very positive and has been positive now going on 3 seasons. But I don't think you can just sweep under the rug the fact that the Nuggets in the third quarter with that starting unit have gone through really intense dry spells offensively. 6 straight minutes without a bucket the other night against Phoenix. A difficult one against Dallas. And then tonight, same thing. Even though they didn't go scoreless, they only got 12 points, and a lot of those came at the end. So it was near scoreless, for their stretch. So I look at that and I go, I think you have to at least win that with the that is still very, very fantastic overall.
I think I'm in the zone of it still being noise. I'm not ready to commit to the idea that there's a third quarter problem yet.
Really?
Maybe that'll wind up being something that reveals itself. I think I'm still in the zone of feeling like that's noise and a coincidence versus a trend.
What about this? What if it's fatigue? because this group, that unit has played a lot of minutes and put a lot of energy. I mean, they were coming up. This road trip began with 2 overtime games,
right?
And I do feel like there's this sort of residual, like you don't get back to 0 until you get a real rest, and maybe that's it. They have energy in the first quarter. They have less in the third.
Maybe that is it. You could do something like how Nick Nurse handles it in Toronto, where he's had Aaron Baines start the game at center, and then at half, Chris Boucher starts.
That's not Michael Malone. You could do it, but
yeah, I mean, like I'm just trying to think of like how you kind of manage these differentials. I mean, maybe that does boost you in the third quarter.
Right.
I think that there is a risk to, because everybody's kind of settled in now. That's the other thing I will say, and people will say like, "Oh, Malone's just being stubborn." Are you with me on this? That players get annoyed when you screw with their rotation when it changes because they like the comfort of knowing of the routine.
I think there's a real balance to it. There's certainly that on one end of the spectrum, and there's over tinkering it, or on the other end. But there probably is a healthy medium. The one thing I'll say is one trend under Michael Malone is that his starting lineups play an enormous amount of minutes together. If you look at it, the Nuggets, I looked this up yesterday. I don't think it's changed, in 24 hours. Denver's starting lineup with Barton has the 4th or 5th, I can't remember what it was, 4th or 5th most minutes of any 5-man lineup. What's crazy is they didn't play together for 4 games. So they've done that all in 4 fewer games than everybody else. So the teams at the top, Philadelphia, okay, you'd expect that. The Knicks, of course, Thibodeau, he plays his guys like an enormous amount of minutes. So that tells you that Malone, and last year, by the way, same thing, the 5-man starting unit played more minutes than anybody for the longest time. That tells you that Malone really doesn't like to change his rotation no matter what's happening in the game. It would be like a last resort for him to say, I got to get these guys and shake it up.
I do also feel that the difference this year, and one of the reasons those lineups have played more, is related to the fact that I think he thinks he's found a way to get the bench to a good spot as long as they have some starters with them.
Yeah.
But I don't think that I do not believe that he thinks I can leave the bench out there and we'll be fine.
Right.
Like,
yeah, you're getting some contributions. What about this one? Isaiah Hartenstein just completely out of the rotation, which is surprising to me because I thought he played well enough. And even with PJ Dozier out now, RJ Hampton and Isaiah Hartenstein still on the bench. What do you make of that?
I think he likes his guards. One, I think RJ has really impressed him. I think this mostly just comes down to he wants to see what RJ can do, because I think he's liked what he's seen of RJ in practice environments and in limited game time. I think he likes RJ a lot.
Yeah, I think so too.
I will also say, like, I wonder if part of this is like determining whether or not RJ needs to get Facu's minutes.
You think? I thought Facu was good today.
It's fine. I'm saying, like,
he was a -2. So
the gap between, like, now, if he's fine, we're like, it was pretty good, versus at the start of the season we expected it to be like great.
Yeah.
And so I think that I think the fact that Campazzo can't get more minutes makes me think that there is a concern from Malone about giving him more minutes.
Yeah, I don't know. Campazzo is such a hot or cold player. I'm looking at his stat sheet and it really doesn't look that great. But when I was watching tonight, I felt like he was having himself a pretty good night. I'll have to really key in on this as I do my
good energy. Always plays with heart.
Yeah,
scrappy little guy. But you're
really endearing yourself to Argentinian fans.
No, like I expect, honestly, like, beyond all the jokes, like, I expected him to be like a major rotation piece. I have concerns that they banked a lot on him, and if there's one thing, like, they banked a lot on JaMychal Green, and he has exceeded.
He really has exceeded all expectations, man. And everybody. So we've heard obviously Jokic first, then we heard Michael Porter Jr. Tonight it was Jamal Murray talking about how much he loves the dude and loves playing with him. I mean, he's got to feel so at home with his team, with how much everybody seems to appreciate what he does. People don't always appreciate the role players, and he's really getting a lot of praise from teammates and coaches.
I talked about this today on a podcast with Zach Bai from 104.3, that I talked about how I do think that Green felt really slighted last year, and rightfully so, that the Clippers were like, oh, we got a huge addition. We got Marcus Morris.
Right.
And it's like, well, you have Harkless and Jermichael Green, and they both play well. We got Marcus Morris. He was good for the Knicks.
Right.
And, and like, look, if you watch the Clippers this year, Morris is not a plus player. He's not. Like, Jermichael Green is better. He just is. And so I do think that there's a level to which, like, Denver is like, we want you. We think you'll be great. You can come win here. Let's go. Yeah. And he's in, and the team's in, and it's worked out well. Let's take a break, and when we come back, we'll wrap up our thoughts on this game, and we'll get to some looking ahead and let's go around the league a little bit, because I have a situation around the league I want to talk to you about as well. We'll do that after the break. But before that, let's talk about Built Bar. Delicious Built Bar. I've started a fasting routine, Adam. And I'm on intermittent fasting, and the first thing that I have when I get off of my intermittent fast is a Built Bar. I prefer the peanut butter ones because they're delicious, but they come in 12 original flavors and 6 new ones like cherry barcia, lemon almond cheesecake. They're covered in 100% chocolate. They're soft and easy to chew. They're great if you're trying to be health conscious like me. They're low calorie, low sugar, high protein, high fiber, and great for a keto diet. Peanut butter bars got 19 grams of protein, 180 calories, only 5 grams of sugar, and only 5 gram net carbs. Go to BuiltBar.com and use promo code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, and you'll get 20% off your next order. Use promo code LOCKEDON for 20% off at BuiltBar.com. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Final segment here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for making this part of your day. We're really excited to have you. If you're listening to this on 9 News, if you're watching this on the 9 News, make sure to check out, we have a daily podcast. You can find wherever you get your podcast, Locked On Nuggets. We're excited to be part of the Tegna Network. So, Adam, what do you think of Marcus Howard tonight?
He's fun, man. I mean, I don't really have Marcus Howard thoughts. I hate that.
252. Why not?
And I have to get out in front of this. I don't have strong takes, but I will say he's an elite garbage time player because that guy can shoot, man. And he's always looking to shoot. And so you could see when he was out there tonight, like he was just looking for the tiniest bit of daylight to get shots up, and he went 2 for 2.
His per 36s are going to be amazing by the end of the year. That's going to be an incredible one. Can we talk about Bol for a minute?
Sure.
So you were super high on the potential of Bol in the preseason, and I'm not here to be like, ha, you were wrong. I more want to know what is your opinion on why he has not been the kind of player that fans, and honestly, I think the front office to a certain degree thought he was going to be this season.
I think opportunity is the biggest thing, and that opportunity might be justified. We don't see behind closed doors, but who would he knock out of the rotation right now? You could say okay, it's not Jermichael Green, it's not Nikola Jokic, it's not going to be, small forward, it's not going to be Michael Porter. So then you get to the backups. Well, it's not going to be Paul Millsap. We know, even if you think Paul Millsap needs some time off, it was never going to be him that gets replaced in the rotation. So who is playing minutes right now, meaningful minutes that you could say he would replace? And there's just no one, even if he was good. And we know that just from playing young guys without experience, there's going to be a period of he's just not good right now, and we have to get through it. The Nuggets have had too many of those, and there just hasn't been opportunity. So he might be good, but given the limited minutes he's played, and most of the minutes we see him at are garbage time, I don't really have a strong read on it, other than he doesn't look like he's ready to leapfrog someone that we didn't expect.
Spurs are up next. That's a trap game.
Maybe they're up next, right?
So they played tonight.
Oh, yeah, they did. I'm looking at it. Yep, you're right.
They beat the Celtics. They got cleared, and they beat the Celtics tonight. Now, we'll see if the league comes to regret that decision, as they have so often with some of these situations. But Spurs are up next. That feels very much to me like a trap game situation. Am I wrong?
The nice thing about it is I don't know that there is a trap. This is a little bit of house money, and you never want to get into that. But when you go on a 5-game road trip and start 4-0, if you drop that last game, I don't think it's the end of the world. So trap game, I don't know. That would be more about if they were 2-2 and this was the one they had circled as a win. But I do think it's going to be tough. You can look at this win streak that the Nuggets are on right now through any light that you want to. They beat the Suns 2 times in a row, and I think those are really good wins. Suns are also on a little bit of a slump right now. They started so hot, but they haven't been so hot over the back half of the schedule so far. They beat the Oklahoma City Thunder. Okay, not a great team, although they did beat the Suns tonight. They beat Miami tonight, who was extremely shorthanded. They beat Dallas, who was extremely shorthanded. I'm not trying to take away from any of those wins because your record, you either win or lose in this game, and you only play who's in front of you. But Denver I still feel like has a lot to prove. And so, but that game's by no means one of those games that I look at and I go, oh, Denver should roll on that one. They're 10-8.
Do you remember a time when like the Spurs were the team that the Nuggets just could not get past? Like no matter what they did, they just could not beat them.
Sure.
It was like a couple of years ago. That was the team that no matter what happened, like Malone could not figure it out. Should be different. I will say, if you want kind of a mini guide to that game, here's what it looks like. The Spurs are going to lose the first quarter because they always get outscored with DeMar DeRozan and LaMarcus Aldridge on the court in the first quarter. Okay. They're going to win the second quarter by about 6 to 8 points. So be prepared. The Nuggets are going to, if they are up 10 after the first quarter, do not let your guard down. They're going to come back on you in the second quarter. Their bench is amazing for the second year in a row. Third quarter is where things are really a coin flip. Sometimes the Spurs are awesome in that quarter. Sometimes they're awful. And if they come out and they play well, and the Nuggets have another drought, like you've been talking about, they could be down in that fourth quarter and it could get real dicey. So that's like a mini look at how San Antonio has performed quarter by quarter. I have two more things I want to hit with you before we get out of here. Bradley Beal looks miserable.
Man, he does.
Miserable. I'm writing an article that's going to be on Action Network tomorrow. I checked in again today. Everyone that I have heard from has said that he does not want to be traded during a COVID season, that he doesn't want to deal with the logistics of a trade right now. I wonder if that's changing based off of how badly this has gone since the Wizards got back. I will say the Suns are 1-4 since their postponement. So I think there might be something to be said for you're off for longer and it breaks your rhythm and it takes
for sure
to get back on track.
For sure.
And but the problem was like the Wizards track was bad before.
It was a bad track. Yeah.
So that's kind of.
I just think they're not good though, Matt. That's the thing, and him saying that, if that is something that's going on behind the scenes, like I feel bad for him too because he is miserable. But I feel the same way about the Minnesota Timberwolves tonight, who blew a lead against the Warriors and ended up getting blown out, and now they fall to I think 4-13. Your season's not over.
It's over.
No, it's pretty much over. It's pretty much over. I mean, look, you have a 7-game win streak, and maybe you can talk yourself into being right there again if you're Washington in the East. But I mean, it's pretty much over, and that's the season. There's a lot of season left for you to know that your season's over.
They need to go pure process. They need to trade Towns. They need to trade Russell.
Ooh, man, it's coming in hot. Trade Karl Anthony Towns.
I don't think they should trade him because he's not a good player. I just think there's the only way this ends is with him being the star that gets traded. Like,
right?
How many times do we have to see this? Just get ahead of it.
It's so true. Like,
just get ahead of it.
Vanderbilt has been good. Beasley's been good for him. But you're right; those guys aren't winning you a championship around them. The best you could do is have a slow build where 2 years from now you're almost ready, but he's ready to be gone.
Yeah, that's what happened to the Pelicans. They beat the Blazers. And everyone was like, the Pelicans have arrived.
Right.
And then he asks out.
Right.
Like, this is how it goes, And Towns has Towns is having a season from hell. Like, after everything he went through last year. And now he's out with COVID. Like, it's just, I feel so bad for the guy. Last thing. Are you with me that there should be no All-Star game?
Yeah, that seems like an unnecessary thing. And I don't know how much money it is that the league feels like they're losing from this or that. But as far as like an intrigue thing, I'm not that intrigued by it. So
I am very much understanding of the financial realities and why the season needed to start and why they needed to play X amount of games, etc. As much as I wish they had done, they've been like, we'll make less money and done like a 57 game season starting in March. That I think would have been ideal. I get why they didn't. This is hubris and greed.
It feels like it. And, we laughed about this when we were talking about the vaccine distribution in the NBA trying to, quote unquote, skip the line. And, I said I personally didn't mind it, but the PR spin of it was silly. I feel the same way for this All-Star weekend. There was, but we're going to do something great. And it's like, come on, man. Like, just
we know. We're all going through this. We know things are normal.
Look, small business owner here. Like we have to make certain sacrifices that are like, hey, we wish that we could do everything this way or that way, but it's like, so I get it, but at the same time, don't spin it as something that it's not. But the All-Star game certainly feels like an overkill for even if you're like me and you afford the NBA a lot of liberties and say, hey, we get it. That's one that I'm like, come on, man.
Look, I'm glad to come on here and talk basketball with you, and we keep it to that for the most part, unless situations warrant it. But Sekou Smith died
the
night, and there are people in the industry that are nice, and then there are people that I've met that are good, and Sekou was a good man. And everyone I know that was close to him, and I hung out with him like a couple times, but I knew him through people so much because they would talk about him. It hurt badly to lose him. 48 years old.
Not that old.
Husband and father, and he's gone.
Yeah.
And so I just want to stress, like, we are close to seeing the end of the tunnel. We are close to a return to, if not normalcy, then at least a better version of the world we've had to live in since last March. Don't crack now. Don't just keep wearing your masks. Keep taking care of people. Keep doing the right thing. We didn't have to lose Sekou Smith, and we did. And I'm heartbroken that that's what happened. So anyway, good win for the Nuggets. And
transition there.
And we'll be back with another episode on Locked On Nuggets throughout the week, heading into the game with the Spurs, and then getting ready for Jazz Nuggets 2 on Sunday.
Oh boy.
Rumble. It'll be a good one. We will keep you updated on all the happenings with the Nuggets and everything else here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, for Adam Mares, I'm Matt Moore. We'll see you again next time.